Ready when you are. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Real Estate Plate. As always, I'm your host, Nick Sakalis, coming to you live from the WGBB studios here in Merrick, New York. Enjoying the weather, Trevor?
I am.
I am. I definitely am. I'll be very, very happy to see no more snow.
I will.
You know, it's March. Anything could happen.
I think if it was March is practically almost over.
Yeah, but last year we got snow in May,
We sure did.
so you never know.
You never know.
But you know what? I'm happy. I'll be fairly thankful if it's minimal going forward.
Okay.
But if this is a sign of things to come, I'm very happy. You know,
Here is something that you may not really realize. Okay.
what's that?
Now, I don't want to bring in the religion into it, but there's a part in the Bible. That's it. Okay.
What's that?
It talks about the season. There will come a time in the book of Ecclesiastes. It talks about when it's supposed to be summer, it is snowing. And when it's snow, it's to be summer. So it's going to be vital. So the weather is going to change. And I know they talk about, all that kind of stuff. But these are seasons. It's like in our lives, we all have seasons. Man. You got December,
Yeah,
February, and everybody coincides with what season goes with that.
I definitely get that. And I'll tell you something. Um, I really believe that, you know, what we're doing with the environment today does affect it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be one of these people that basically believe that we're not messing up anything. We are,
Right.
but at the same time, I also am a big believer in history.
Okay.
And historically, we've gone through major uh, temperature changes. We've gone through ice ages. We've gone through these super hot warming of the planet, back to ice ages, etc., etc. So it's part of the program as far as being here on Mother Earth. We're going to see drastic changes. So you know, it's good not to pollute. It's good not to put in excessive type of toxins in our environment. But at the same time, it's inevitable. Things are going to change.
And don't forget now, man is always the most destructive for himself. If they build atomic bombs, they end up killing themselves. I mean, we do stuff that causes problems.
Yeah, I mean,
Smoke in the air, polluting the water, oil, and I mean,
absolutely,
hey, it's a part of nature.
absolutely. And of course, I don't silence my phone. That's what I always do. And always, just like every other time, I always get everybody call me during the that 1 hour that I tell all my clients that I can't speak. They always love to call during that time. So it's going to keep happening. What are you going to do? With that being said, you know, because of the weather, activity has really amplified. We are seeing major momentum in the real estate market. It looks like the buyer sentiment is picking up exactly where it left off before we got into our winter mode. Sellers are slowly but surely starting to put their houses on the market, and I do say slowly because there is still a lot of cautions from sellers and a lot of people that were going to be selling have put it on the back burner for some time. So that being said, I don't believe that we're going to see a equilibrium in our supply and demand anytime soon. It could happen over the next few months going into the end of the year, but at this point, I don't see it happening quickly in order to be just in time for the season. I've said this before, and I might actually be underestimating it. I've done the calculation, and we basically need about approximately 2.5 houses to be listed and go on the market for every one that sells in order to bring us to a healthy type of selling environment of a good balance of supply and a good balance of demand. Most real estate polls and real estate statistical type of settings usually say that they would like to have a 6 month inventory in order to say that it's a healthy market. Right now, I'll be ecstatic if we have a 4 month inventory because it will somehow balance out everything a little bit at least, and it will allow a lot of buyers that have been shut out of the market to get a place where they've been getting outbid multiple times. It's a strange environment. It's a strange market. Anybody that tells you they've lived through this before, they don't know what they're talking about because it's a real different type of scenario than what we had in the past. I've gone through sellers markets multiple times. We've never had this type of um, inequality in supply, and a lot of it is artificial, but at the same time, it's real. So we're going to see how this is going to go moving forward. It's going to be an interesting market. I'll tell you something. It's going to keep me up for quite a few nights trying to do the best I can for my clients. And on that note, I just wanted to give a personal note out to a lot of people that I've been involved with the landlord and uh, the eviction moratorium situation that we're dealing with, and all the landlord groups. I know that I've been a little bit not active the way I normally would be. I usually am a lot more active, a lot more vocal. I put out a lot more videos and posts on a weekly basis, and I'm going to get back on in gear doing so. It just has been an unordinary type of situation where I've been packed with work. I've been packed with personal things that I'm dealing with, and it helped me on the back burner a little bit as far as keeping up with what I need to do. And I do apologize to all the landlords that have uh, depended on me to constantly be advocating and put my vocal thoughts out there and doing all I can to try to get some kind of ears on our problems. And I'm going to continue doing that. I'm gonna get myself back in gear with that. And again, I apologize for not being in there, but at the same time, like I said, one of the things that is super important is that I need to take care of the clients that I'm dealing with. You know, they need to be understand that they're number one as far as my priorities. And although the landlord advocacy that I've been dealing with, it does affect me personally. I have to put my personal issues to a little bit to the side in order to take care of my clients' needs first, and then without losing eye on the focus. So that being said, the topic of today's show, as you could see from the description, is real estate psychology. And I'm going to tackle this topic in a couple of different ways. You know, psychology is a very broad subject, and depending on what side of the equation, what person that you're dealing with, from one end or the other, the psychology usually comes out in a different way, and you have to take a different approach. And I'm going to tackle it in a few ways. And since I was on the landlord end of it, I'm going to give a couple of key thoughts as far as a proper approach, a even keel approach, a surefire approach that will help you moving forward if you don't already practice a lot of these things that I'm going to point out. You have scenarios where you're dealing with human beings. You have landlords on one side, you have tenants on the other side. And many times we have tenants that might come out with very outrageous type of demands, unreasonable demands. I keep saying demands because a lot of times that's how it comes out, as demands, not requests. It comes out as demands. And what happens is the more unreasonable they are, the more outraged a lot of landlords get. And when you have a situation like that, you have a combustible kind of scenario. And the way to approach every kind of scenario is to go in with a even keel approach, a logical approach, a way to give people an understanding that you're hearing what they're saying and you're listening to what they're saying and you're in tune with it. That's very important. And that's going to be the theme of the whole show today. It all starts with listening to what's coming at you, what's from the other side, what's coming from the news. You have to train yourself in a way to listen, whether you're a landlord, whether you're a tenant, whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a seller, whether you're a buyer. We need to all be listening to each other, taking in that information, comprehending it, digesting it, and being able to do the best possible thing that we can based on all the information we're taking in. And I'll give you a scenario. You have a tenant that is saying something outrageous. They're, telling you that they're getting a lot of noise that's coming in from the neighbors in the adjoining apartments. They're fighting, whatever the case is. They can't sleep. And for that reason, they don't want to pay you rent. Okay? As a landlord, and I'll tell you something, I talk to landlords all the time. The first impulse is outrage. They start getting irritated and they start to uh, put their anger out onto people because of their initial reaction. And sometimes it's towards the tenant themselves that's making the complaint. Sometimes it's to the neighbor that's being complained about, whether they're guilty of causing problems or not. So, in a case like that, as a landlord, as a housing provider, you have to take in all the information. You need to understand what they're telling you, and you need to approach it in a proper way. Okay? And this comes down to one of the things I've mentioned as a tip for landlords in the past. And if you do have the ability to do so, I sincerely recommend doing so. Having surveillance systems inside your halls and throughout your property. Because you could monitor a lot of things. And believe it or not, when noise is excessive coming out of apartments, you could hear it sometimes through those surveillance cameras that are in the halls. And then you'll know for a fact if that tenant is making a valid or invalid complaint. But even if we can't have that scenario, A right way to go about it is to basically acknowledge what the tenant's telling you, address it in a way where either you're letting that tenant know that you're investigating the problem or you're rectifying it. So the reason I brought up this scenario itself is because it's one of the most common things I hear all the time. Oh, they're fighting, they're making noise, the dog's barking, this is going on, something's going on. I can't get some sleep. I'm not paying you rent. 99% of the time, it's an excuse. For some reason or another, the tenant either doesn't want to pay rent or the tenant can't pay rent. So when I hear a scenario like that, the first thing I'm going to do, I'll just tell you how I tackle this on a personal level. Then you might be able to take what I say, adapt it, use it for yourselves, use it as a template, or possibly ignore it and just do anything you want to do anyway. That's your prerogative of how you want to go about it. So what I suggest to a person in that case is, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, you're telling me that the neighbors are excessively loud, they're putting a lot of noise into the place. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell that tenant, I understand. I hope this is a one-time occurrence, or if they're saying it's a multiple nights, I hope this is not going to continue, but I'll do everything I can to address it and make sure you get good peace and quiet during hours that noise should be brought down. Excuse me. So the hours that usually are set as hours that should be peace and quiet hours are from usually 10 p.m. going to about 6 7 p.m. a.m. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to go to the tenant and accuse them. I'm going to send a letter out to every single person in that building, including the person that made that complaint, that we've had reports of excessive noise levels during improper times. We are looking to have an environment for everybody to be able to enjoy living in the building, in the complex, or whatever type of rental it is, with a un you know unmolested, untampered type of a situation for themselves, and being able to live their lives. That's not exactly how I'm gonna write it out, but you get what I'm saying. You get the gist of what I'm hinting to. And then I'm going to send it out. So the key is I'm sending this letter out to everybody, but I'm also making sure that a letter does go out to that tenant themselves. So one, they saw I took some action. Two, as I'm going through that walkthrough of the property, which I routinely do, depends on the size of the property and depends on the activity of that property. If it's multiple units or if it's just a few units, I might frequent it more times than less. But on my next inspection tour of the building or the property, I'm going to speak to any of the tenants I see without accusing and just mention that I've been hearing a lot of noise. Have you been hearing a lot of noise? Including to the person that has been accused. And see how the reaction is. And once in a blue moon, I get an honest reaction. And sometimes you get a tenant say, I'm sorry, I've been fighting with my wife. I'm sorry, my dog's been excessively barking, whatever the case is. At least now I have an idea of what's going on and what the root problem is. And now they know that I'm aware of it, and more than likely they're going to be more mindful of what they're doing. In a perfect world, everything would go back to normal and we won't have any more problems. And that's a way of listening, addressing, taking in all the information, and taking hold of the situation and doing the best you can with it. But again, that's one scenario. You have all different kind of scenarios as far as communication is in place. Now, as far as being from a landlord-tenant thing, we're going to basically tackle that and address it in more detail in a future show, and basically break down different scenarios and give everybody a understanding of how to deal with the worst case scenarios and how to deal with problematic tenants and even problematic landlords. But that's a whole show in itself, and there's not even enough time in one show to be able to put that in. So we'll address that. So let's get a little bit into what's going on in the current market with buyer and seller sentiment. And I'll tell you something, psychology has really, really played a big role as far as being able to understand not only this market, but to understand all the people and the players involved in this market. Because you have sellers that are thinking in a different way that they have in the past. Not completely different, but they're thinking in a different way than they have in the past. And you have buyers thinking in a different way than they have. And unless you're on the other side, or if you're the real estate agent representing that seller or that buyer, unless you get a good grasp of what that person is saying and understand and listen, not just hear, you got to listen to what they're saying, take all that information and apply it to your current circumstance. You're going to have big problems if you don't do that. It's just the way it is. So right now we're still under COVID times. There's still a lot of panic still in the air. There's still a lot of people out there that have been strongly affected by the coronavirus. You have a lot of people that have been traumatized, scared, and they're not that comfortable having a lot of people coming in through their homes. And it's understandable. And if you're the real estate agent that's representing these people, you need to be mindful of that and understand that. And you need to be able to work and adapt and do everything that you need to do in order not only to appease them, because you're not always going to appease people if it's an illogical thing that they're asking for, but to make them feel safe, to make them feel secure. Now, for the most part, I haven't been doing a lot of open houses, and that's by design. It's worked a lot better for me to bring people on private showings or clustered showings where you bring people in one after the other. And it's almost like a open house setting with the appointment, but it's not open to the public. So in other words, those nosy neighbors that are next door, or the people that are just window shopping and coming around just to see houses for the hell of it or curiosity, are not coming into the places. And we've been asking for people's pre-approvals or proof of funds if they're buying with cash prior to going in, to make sure that they're qualified. And it's a good practice. And this is a practice that should have been applied years ago to the entire market, and not necessarily leaning on these open houses. Now, the open houses have their role and they have their place. They're very helpful on some of the smaller houses. They're very helpful on vacant houses. They're helpful when you have an extremely hot market and a limited amount of time of when you could be able to show the place. They still have their place in this business. But when you're showing places that are past a certain price point, because as everybody knows, you know, I do a lot of different work in different ranges. I could be selling a few $500,000 houses. I could also be selling a couple of multi-million-dollar houses at the same time. And that's just how it comes now. When my clients come to me, I can't control when they're going to come. When they do come, that's when I take on the business. So you might, at any given time, see a mixed bag of type of business that I do. Sometimes you'll see a $10 million development property coming from your commercial property, whatever the case is. But I like the fact that people are reining in a little bit and qualifying buyers a little bit more. And what's this doing for the psychology of the seller? Especially those sellers that are panicked, the ones that have a little bit of a concern. They're scared. It's making them feel more comfortable because, one, you're making the environment a little bit safer for them. It's more controlled. You don't have to have sellers panicking and throwing alcohol and Clorox all over the place as soon as the showings are over, because it's a controlled level. You don't let anybody touch anything, that kind of thing. Obviously, everybody's going to do their cleanups the way they want to, but after a full-blown open house, as controlled as you have it, it's still impossible to rein everybody in. And even though you do it with like a line and you'd only let one party in at a time, what if that one party has 4 or 5 people in there at the same time? Now you got a problem. When it's direct appointments, when it's pre-qualified buyers, they tend not to bring a whole army of people with them. They tend to bring only the people that are the decision makers and the ones that are directly affected after purchasing the home. And it's better for the sellers, and it's a better situation altogether. Trevor, if you were selling your house today, would you want anybody running around in your house? No, right?
No.
Would it make you feel better if every single person that came into your house, has already been either pre-approved or they have the cash in the bank to be able to purchase your home?
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. They seem like they mean business.
That's how it is. And I don't know why this was not a practice that was really taken up. It was always taken up for the high-end properties. But for some reason, somebody that has a $500,000 house, $1 million house, that's still high-end for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a lot of money. And you still don't want somebody that's coming window shopping or an obnoxious neighbor to come and check the place.
No.
Just because they're curious.
That's all that is. You can pick that up right away. That's all it is.
You don't want that to happen.
No. Come looking around, browsing around, what your house looks like.
And I think that's one of the benefits. I can't find a lot of benefits that we've had from this whole COVID situation,
Okay.
but I think that's one of the benefits and one of the things that are enforced right now because of all the protocols that we have that I think should stay as part of the business.
Okay.
You know, here's a dirty secret. Open houses don't really benefit the seller as much as they benefit the real estate agent.
I'm always inquire about that. Always, you see some people going in, coming out, going in, coming out.
They really don't unless, like I said, it's a hot house
Oh, okay.
that's at a like fire sale type of price,
Right,
or
right,
it's a
right,
vacant house that you have limited amount of time to get people in and out.
right.
Unless it's that kind of situation, or you want to create an artificial hype around a place where you need that extra attention on there, because there's a psychology to that. If you're going in as a buyer and you see a line of people waiting outside of the door to get in there,
I wouldn't want
well, you might not want to go in there, but if you really want to buy the house, then you start getting aggressive. You start freaking out that if I don't put a bid on this place, I'm going to lose it. There's a psychological thing from that aspect where you're really just you're basically FOMO,
but I
fear
believe
of
if you
missing
really
out.
want the house, it's like going shopping. You don't go shopping without no money in your pocket, right?
Correct.
You want to purchase something, but you don't know what you might run into. Have something available.
So when you have those situations and have those lines out the door, half those people on the lines are either not in the position to be able to purchase, or they have no intention of purchasing, and they're going in out of curiosity. But that's building an artificial hype to the whole scenario, and the people that are interested are starting to get nervous. Now, where does that really help? That actually helps more the real estate agent than the seller. And I'll tell you why. One, it's a showcase. The people that are coming in, the neighbors, for example, that might be selling their house soon or down the line,
Right.
are seeing what you do to represent the house. So you're showcasing your skills to them and showing them what a great job you're doing as far as representing the house. That's one thing. So that's the first thing that's helping the real estate agents. The second thing is every single person that walks into the place is going to have to sign in, put a phone number, some kind of contact information in there, and now they can't mess around because now we ask for photo ID. Back then it was discretional. I always liked to use the photo ID thing, regardless, but now it's more enforced. So they can't really mess around too much as far as faking who they are. Previously you had people running fake names, John Doe, whatever the case is, and you don't know who the person was. Now it's a little bit more, safeguarded. You know exactly who's coming in into these houses.